Welcome back to another episode of Digging Deep. It is so lovely to have you. We are very clearly in a different spot. We are in my baby. Whoa. We're in my car today. I did not fathom the idea that the space that I use, which is a very public space to film these episodes, would be occupied on a Friday afternoon in a busy neighborhood in the suburbs. I digress. So we are making use of what we have. We are using our resources and trust that the message that I have to get to you will get to you one way or another. One way or another, I'm gonna find you. I'm gonna get you one day, maybe next week. So if there are sounds of a kid's laughing, giggling, earthly sounds, that's just the vibe for today. I can't really escape that. And also I'm not having my car on right now because I don't want my battery to die. So my window is propped open so I can actually get some air circulation in here. So again, I apologize that these episodes are not always filmed in the same place. That's just life, baby. But I'm so, as I say every week, I am so excited for today's episode. It is something that I've been battling with and kind of just very curious about in my own brain and in my own reality, and that is how to be authentic. What does it mean to be yourself? Is authenticity something that is only achieved when we are solely alone and only tuning into our own voice? Or is there a way to cultivate that sense of authenticity and truth to yourself while being in community with other people? And I am someone that consumes a lot of self-help books and a lot of self-help content. And in those messages, a lot of the times, it tells you to just be yourself. But what does that mean? And how do you nurture that and truly learn how to love exactly the way that you were made? So, without further ado, it is time to dig deep. I want to start off by sharing with you a little piece from the book The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin, which, if you're unfamiliar with him, he is let me make sure I get this right. I'm pretty sure he's a music producer that works with a lot of the major artists. The major songs that you've heard on the radio, he's probably had a little bit to do with that. And so he is really big in the creative space, specifically in music. And I'm not going to act like I've read this book or really even started it, but I did flip open to the contents and I looked at one of the 78 areas of thought that he laid out. And the first one is titled, Everyone is a Creator. He says that creativity is not a rare ability. It is not difficult to access. Creativity is a fundamental aspect of being human. It is our birthright, and it's for all of us. Creativity doesn't exclusively relate to making art. We all engage in this act on a daily basis. To create is to bring something into existence that wasn't there before. Attuned choice by attuned choice, your entire life is a form of self-expression. You exist as a creative being in a creative world, a singular work of art. Now, I'm going to talk more about how creativity and authenticity intersect a little bit later into the video, but I kind of just want to lay the foundation for what authenticity really is. When I think of this and when I've been doing research about it, a lot of people describe authenticity as the art of being yourself. The way that you see and interpret and perceive the world and then translate that into a physical thing is your authenticity. And that starts by allowing yourself to dive into and accept all of the parts that make you you. The parts that are maybe messy, the parts that are not organized, that aren't always put together, the parts that aren't in this tightly sealed, perfectly presented box. That is not who you are. Who you are is all of the messiness, all of the chaos, all of the quote-unquote unattractive or unappealing things. That is what makes you you. You would not be you without all of those little quirks. And we all have them, and we all have different ones, a different combination of them, and that is why we are also beautifully ourselves. And we deny ourselves a lot of joy and just human experience when we don't recognize and find a way to truly see the beauty in those parts of ourselves. I want to read you something, and I know I've shared this before, but it just keeps coming up and resonates. So this is something I wrote in my journal, and this past year, I want to say, was like the most, let me not make it lightly. It was the most transformative, personally explorative, heavy, shedding of self, ego death year of my life thus far. And I'm so grateful for it because it forced me to learn how to love me. All of the parts that make me me, that are unique to just me, I love her. I love everything about myself, even the parts that I know I need to work on still. So I wish that for everybody, and I want to just share this little excerpt from my journal, if you will. Of course, I don't have all the answers yet. I'm skeptical if I ever will, but I'm showing up and I'm trying my best to be better and aware and proactive. Even though I fall short and stumble over my words and cry often and think I'm making a mess, I'm learning this is actually my divine magic. My wounding is my wisdom, and I have to go through all of these deaths and rebirths to fully know me. I'm like, what do I want to say? What do I want to say? I want to highlight that point. I'm messy. I stumble over my words. I cry often. Things that can very easily be seen as faults or shortcomings. Those are things that make me me, and without them, I would not be who I am, and I love who I am, and that didn't come easy, and I know that I'm always going to be in a process of becoming and accepting new versions of me as I discover more about myself in the world. But for me, authenticity is what happens when you give yourself the grace and the permission to accept yourself in all of your different forms. And I touch on this a lot in some of my previous episodes as well, but boundaries, the concept of boundaries and knowing what feels right and what feels authentic to you, that is not born without a connection to your authenticity. Boundaries are directly connected to your authenticity, and authenticity is directly connected to your ability to be in tune with your own frequency of intuition, understanding what you desire, being able to advocate for yourself, knowing when to say no, knowing when something doesn't feel right, when to stop, when to keep going, leaning into things and pulling away as you please and as it feels good and nourishing for your soul. That is what authenticity is. Authenticity can't exist without an awareness of and a deep connection to your intuition. Your intuition is the universe or the divine or whatever you believe in. It is their way of communicating to you why you're here and what your soul's purpose is. I think it's really interesting because my middle name directly translates to purpose, and that's something I've always contemplated and thought of, just like big picture, like why am I here? Why was I put on earth at this time, in this body, in this avatar, to experience life, and like how can I help people in my experience? And the only way that I know and I've come to know that I can be authentic is by speaking about things that are happening in my life and that maybe seem mundane. Oh my gosh! There's a hummingbird. I'm literally looking at a tree right now and there's a hummingbird that I just saw go on a tree. I'm going to start crying. This is what being human is about. Oh my gosh. Thank you, universe. Thank you, universe. Oh my gosh, dude. Like, we are here. We are alive to experience. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. The only way I know how to like make a difference in the world is by speaking on things that actually matter. And that comes with speaking about things that maybe seem taboo or that seem mundane and boring and pointless and meaningless. But that's what matters. I will never forget when I was rewatching Little Women. Also, I don't know if I'm yelling or not. I really hope I'm not. And if I am, sorry, audio listeners. You guys are literally only audio listeners. What am I talking about? Well, I guess not if you're watching on YouTube. Anyways, when I was rewatching Little Women for who knows how many times, one of my favorite movies, if not my favorite movie of all time, it was a scene with Joe, Amy, and Beth, and they were coming out of Joe's school that she just bought, and they were talking about basically the importance of life, and Joe, on one hand, was saying that the only way that things can be written is if they're already important. It's saying that, she said that writing confirms their importance, implying that you can't write about something unless it is already meaningful and widely recognized as important. But Amy countered that and said that writing gives them their importance. Documenting things, speaking about things that are seen as mundane and silly and frivolous and unimportant, you giving them that space and that voice to say, hey, this matters, is what gives it its importance. And I feel that way about my life. Like, truly, I'm just a girl, but I also am a vessel of so many lessons and potentially wisdom to people, and I know that I have things to share, and that if I put something out talking about my genuine, real, lived experience, it could maybe make someone feel less alone. And isn't that what it's all about? Isn't that what we're here for, just to help each other see the beauty in our life and recognize the joy in a world that is so focused on keeping us away from that sense of whimsy and beauty and that zoom in focus of love? Like, isn't that the whole point? That's what I think the whole point is. And like I said, The only way that you're able to achieve that I've come to know, is by connecting to your authenticity, is by leaning into what makes you, you, even if that feels weird or cringy. Authenticity is what happens when we allow ourselves to be messy and unpolished, when we don't have a filter for our ideas, when we don't automatically boo ourselves off stage before we've even gotten the chance to perform. That's a quote that I saw probably on Instagram or TikTok because, hello, chronically online, guilty. But I love, love, love that sentiment. Do not boo yourself off stage before you've given people the chance to see you. And I have a background as being a dancer. For the longest time, that was like my main identity. And I have experienced so many times where I've overthought things and I've wanted to be like other people as a means to seem more talented or more put together or be more appealing and get more opportunities. But that never, ever, 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 ever felt true to me. I was always looking outside myself and trying to copy other people to be understood. There's an article called Beyond Authenticity that does a deep dive into what it means to really be ourselves. I'll link it in the show notes below, but it really was eye-opening to read. It's all about these different existentialism philosophers, existentialistic, is that a word? Philosophers that believed in existentialism before it was really even a thing, and they were trying to understand how to nurture their own authenticity. She writes about Hannah Arendt, which I believe was a German philosopher, and she says that she was actively wrestling with what it meant to be a person in the world, with her loneliness and feeling that there was something more inside herself. In this article, they deep dive into all different types of philosophers and the difference between finding yourself in solitude and using your loneliness as a portal to deeply understand yourself and build a solid sense of self, and figuring out if you can truly be 100% authentic in community with other people. A book titled Being in Time by the philosopher Heidegger says, most of our everyday existence is inauthentic because being in the world with others turns us away from being with our true selves. The authentic self is the self that is broken away from the herd. It is the self that exists for the self alone. So he had the perspective and the opinion that we can only truly be ourselves when we are alone. In our everyday lives, think about going to work and your list of have-tos that you do every single day. There is not much room to intentionally add in time to do what you want to do, to connect with your desires and connect with that sense of authenticity. And I do agree to this to some extent because even today, like today I was supposed to be at work this morning and I had a list of have-tos, but I listened to my intuition, I listened to my authentic inner calling to rest. And I slept in till like 12. I slept for probably over 12 hours and I feel great. I feel inspired. I feel rejuvenated and I'm able to speak here with conviction and speak here with meaning. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I just was go, go, go. And in our capitalist society, I say this all the time, but there is not a priority or any sort of emphasis on slowing down and being intentional and moving with the seasons. But as we are designed, we are cyclical beings, we are human beings, we are not machines, and we are here to flow with life, be in co-creation with the universe, and let ideas, experiences, wisdom, thoughts, projects, art flow from us. But that only is able to be accomplished when we are deeply in tune with our inner world. He describes this as authenticity against everydayness, breaking the habit of being yourself. So he views the inauthentic self as your everyday self, meaning the person that you are that maybe you have to be always on or that you have to perform in order to succeed in your job or just be accepted in the world. That is not who you really are. And I think a lot of us learn through childhood, teenagehood, onward into early adulthood, how to shape ourselves and reconstruct who we are to be more palatable and accepted in the world. That is an act of conformity. Conformity directly negates and contradicts authenticity. You cannot be like everybody else if you want to be your authentic self. And there comes a reckoning with being seen as weird, being not accepted, and being different if you want to truly be yourself. Authenticity, as described by Heidegger, is to allow oneself to experience for a moment the terrifying aloneness of non-existence, one's death while still being alive. And this is kind of the overarching idea, from what I understand from this article, of German existentialism. It is understanding that we come into this world alone, we leave alone, therefore we can only truly rely on ourselves. And when we start to listen and prioritize other people's opinions, thoughts, or just feelings about our lives, that is when we begin to lose ourselves. And authenticity for the French existentialists was not about uncovering a pre-existing true self, but rather choosing to engage in a process of becoming. And I like this one as well. I can see both of them. I kind of believe in an idea of authenticity that blends both of these ideas, but I like that their perspective is grounded in the understanding that this higher self or better self, best version of you that is preached so heavily, especially in our current self-help culture, is non-existent. You will not get there if you don't nurture who you are now. You are the best that you will ever be right now, because the future doesn't exist yet and the past already happened. So how can you be your quote-unquote best self right now? It's achievable, and this constant pursuit of one day I'll get there is what keeps us unsatisfied. Ooh, did not mean to hit that. Is what keeps us unsatisfied in the now. That tension between reflecting on maybe if you were better in the past or how you could be better in the future is not giving you any sort of space to recognize just how far you've come in the now. Arendt believed in the power of will, and she viewed will as a space of tension inside the self where one actively feels the difference between where they are and where they would like to be. Willing has the power to shape us by drawing us into conflict with ourselves. And reading this, I just thought it was so rich and beautifully tied into the season of life that I just had in 2024. That whole season for me was just categorized by this inner turmoil and tension of wanting to be someone that I've always wanted to be and wanting to step into that but not really knowing how, and battling with all of my big emotions. And then at the end of it, what really changed everything for me was, instead of trying to fight those and change who I am, accepting who I am, understanding that I am me for a reason. It is a gift to be me, just like it is a gift to be you. And we all were given our different sets of how our brains are wired, how our hearts are wired, how big our hearts are, how big our capacity to care is, and be connected with the universe and with other people. And sometimes that task of being extremely sensitive can feel so overwhelming and uncomfortable, and like you cannot do anything about it, and you don't know how to even exist in your own body. But instead of running from your feelings, the best thing that I ever did and I could ever tell anybody else to do is sit with that. Sit with that. Be so curious about what that is teaching you. And through that, you're going to find authenticity, and you're going to understand and realize the magic of being yourself. Arendt says that willing is what creates a feeling of being pulled in multiple directions at once. To be in a state of willing is to be in the now, reckoning with wanting to go this way and that way, past and present, having one foot in each door, is what grounds you in the now, because you realize that the past doesn't exist anymore, the future doesn't exist yet, but you are here now, and that is all that matters. The version of you that is here right now deserves your attention and your time and your love and your care, just as much as you consider the past versions of you and the future versions of you. The tension of will is vital for bringing consciousness to decision-making. The will is the only intervention we have against the conditioning of worldly existence. And she describes will, the author of this article, describes will as being the connection to freedom. Will is what allows us to choose consciously how we're going to move in this world, and I personally would argue that authenticity is our biggest act of freedom. Being unlike anybody else is what gives you the freedom to do whatever you want. No one is telling you what you should be, and no matter how much they try to tell you what you should or shouldn't be, you're going to tune that voice out, because all that matters is the voice in your own head. Heidegger believed that we can only be authentic when we are alone, whereas Arendt believed we are never truly alone. In her work and studying, Arendt wrote that she would always be different, but instead of experiencing her difference as something that isolated her from others, it became the foundation for how she came to love the world of being with others. Chef's kiss, snaps, snaps. It is our differences and it is the seemingly isolating things about us, our quirks, like I mentioned previously, that brings us together, that reminds us that we are all human, that you don't have to be perfect, you don't have to be put together. Perfection is a made up concept and it is not achievable by anyone, no matter how perfectly presenting they are. It is what seemingly isolates us and casts us away from other people that really does draw us together. Talking about your experiences, talking about the times that you failed, times that you have gone off your quote unquote path and strayed away from that, and what you learned from that is what allows people to grow and feel united in their own experiences. With talking about authenticity, there's also an element of paradox. In order to create, you have to live, but in order to live, you have to intentionally slow down. And the only way to intentionally slow down is to remove all the learned ideas of constant production, constantly outdoing yourself and chasing this better version. To be authentic and to live and potentially create things, if you want to be an artist, which we all are, you have to find a way to slow down, to live, to flow with life. And there's a TED Talk about this. It's called The Paradox of Authenticity. In that talk, she says that authenticity is being the author of one's life. You have to act, not just think, your way into being authentic. And being authentic requires you to take action. You can't just say that, oh, just be yourself. Oh, this is how you do this. Because even consuming content that says that stuff, that is someone else's own recipe for being themselves. You are not them, therefore you have to come up with your own way of being you. And that comes from not filtering your thoughts, not filtering your ideas before you can even put them out or before you can even try. You are your best and your most authentic when you are not editing yourself constantly. And funny enough, this morning, one of the videos that I watched on my TikTok doom scroll, because thank goodness it's back, was a video of Matthew McConaughey talking about the most infamous scene from Interstellar, the one where he's watching his children's lives back in space on that little video screen. And that performance always brings tears to my eyes and gives me full body chills because of the raw emotion. And get this, that was done on the first take. The take you see in the movie was his live, raw, uncut, unscripted, unedited reaction. And that is one of the most moving performances I've personally ever seen. And it is so meaningful and connects with so many people because it's real. That was not scripted. Him having that pouring out of him, that emotion, was genuine. I think that is just a testament to the fact that you cannot edit yourself or correct yourself or overanalyze yourself into being authentic. That only comes through being absolutely present. And he was saying how they tried other takes, they did it again, but even when he went over and over and tried to replicate what he got in the first take, it was never the same because he was anticipating. He was trying to recreate what he already did. He was trying to outdo himself and be perfect when the perfect thing was him doing it for the first time without any expectations, without anybody telling him what it should or shouldn't be. And that can be applied to so many aspects of life, but you are at your most authentic and your most you version of you when you're not constantly editing yourself, when you're not constantly fixating on how you can be better, how yourself right now is not good enough. Just live, be, flow, embrace you and what feels natural to you. And if you have something inside of you that gets excited naturally about something, chances are you're meant to be doing that. Chances are if you lean into that, you'll feel even more like you than when you started. The paradox of authenticity happens when you try to think yourself into being yourself, when really you just need to be yourself into being yourself. There's no perfect way to do it. It just happens by trying and embracing. You don't need more things. You don't need to consume more content. You don't need someone else telling you how to be yourself, which is also kind of contradictory because I'm literally here telling you how to be yourself. But I'm really just telling you to tune into what you already know, your own truths. And all the answers you seek are not going to be found externally. The universe can communicate to you in a bunch of different forms, but at the end of the day, you were wired the way you were because you are your own internal compass. You are your own guiding light when you are lost. And you feel even more lost when you try to consume things to make you feel like yourself, because they're not you. You have to go inwards to find yourself and to embrace who you already are. I used to always think that like becoming an adult and growing and becoming someone new required me to be entirely different and to take on this new identity, and I would be so different than my childlike self. Like, how could I possibly ever resemble that? That's so childlike and immature. But actually being in my adult years is really just a coming home to myself. It's really just reclaiming my inner child and all the things that lit me on fire and made me feel truly alive when I was younger, and finding a way to incorporate that in the midst of still being this mature adult. When you are a kid, you are your most authentic. I will stand by that, especially after working with kids. You are the most you version of you because you have no concept of less than, better than, insufficient, insecure, shy. You are unapologetically you. And when I think back to my younger self, there are so many videos of me just dancing, singing, making stuff up as I go, forcing my mom to record me, being a full human being and just being happy to be alive. I was so full of life, and I still very much am. But along the way, especially in my teenage years, I learned how to quiet myself down, how to not exist as loudly, how to be shy. I did not have a shy bone in my body when I was younger. I was the most loud, vibrant, sure of myself version when I was a child. And I feel like this is a thing that happens to so many of us. This learned shyness, this learned insecurity that is not your own. It is put onto you by the world around you that says that you should feel insecure, especially as a woman, which, don't get me started on that. That is not your own. That is not yours to carry, and liberating yourself involves shedding all of those things that do not serve you. I have not been a shy person until I learned that I should be shy, that I learned that I should be embarrassed for certain things, that I learned that I should be quiet about my voice and my opinions. I am not like that at my core, and I'm really, really, really trying to step back into who I truly am, which is a loud, expressive, compassionate, open, outspoken, confident person. I do not claim anything that is not that. That is not mine, and I do not want to hold that weight anymore. That is inauthentic to me, and whatever that looks like for you, follow that. Lean into that, and ask your parents what you were like when you were younger. Ask your parents for pictures, and look at the joy and just the whimsy and the magic of your childlike self, because that is who you really are. Your childlike self is your most authentic version of you, and it is your job as an adult to find a way to reconnect with them, because they desperately want to be seen and acknowledged again. It's really the biggest curse and the biggest, I don't even know the right word for it, but the biggest loss, I guess, when we are told that we should pack that version of ourselves up in a box and push it away to the back of our closet and never look at it again. That version of you is still within you. They just need to be given the permission to come out and play again. Your authenticity and your creativity are directly intertwined. I don't think creative expression can exist without an awareness of who you are and making things that feel deeply and truly and honestly you. Like I mentioned, I grew up a dancer. My entire teenage years was categorized as being a dancer, and something that my high school dance teacher would always teach us is the power of the creative process, of tuning into your creative voice and really nurturing that. And one of my favorite pieces that I've ever created, it was to the song Ultralight Beam by Kanye West, and it was all about my journey with spirituality that was kind of catapulted by the lockdown, which goes with the theme of retreating into yourself to really find yourself. And I love that piece, and I always rewatch it when I need to feel like myself again, because I created something so beautifully just from being present in my life, being present for the lessons and the things that I was learning. And it didn't look like anything else that anybody else made because it was mine. It came from me, and that's not building this hierarchy of better or worse, or saying that mine was better or worse than anybody else's, or superiority or inferiority. But it's just the simple fact that creativity can only truly exist when you are honest with yourself and when you are trying to be nobody else but yourself. Creativity is spontaneous. I was listening to an episode of Skinny Dipping with Kayla Rose, and I cannot think of her name. Oh my gosh, it's going to really annoy me. Kitty, with Kitty. Skinny Dipping episode with Kitty. I love both of them so much, but they were talking about how creativity is spontaneous, and you can't plan to have a great idea. It just happens. Just like with Matthew McConaughey. He didn't plan to give the best performance of the day with that. It just happened because he was present for what was happening internally within him. And creativity, I've heard it be described as a muscle, and I do agree with that. With a muscle, you do have to constantly be exercising it and strengthening it. And just like your muscles, your physical muscles are, your mind is, your creativity is. The more that you exercise that muscle, the higher chances you are of having this big moment, this breakthrough moment. And that's the same way with your habits. I didn't finish this book either, so don't think that I have all the answers. But in the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, he describes your success as being built by your everyday habits, and your habits build. That tension, that progress builds, and boom, it erupts. It's like tectonic plates. They're moving, they're in constant movement and motion with each other until one day that tension builds up enough to create an eruption, to create a reaction. Or in the sense of your creativity, you build, you nurture until one day you have that breakthrough moment where everything just clicks. Your perception of greatness is always changing, and the only way to be authentic is to honor exactly where you are right now. Something that you put out before, you may look back on and be like, oh my gosh, that is not me at all. But that version of you that made that was what you knew to be authentic at the time. And I am so excited to talk about this person. He's one of my favorite humans, creatives ever, Tyler, the Creator. I think the reason why he is so successful and why he is truly the blueprint for creatives everywhere is because he is so in tune with his own voice, with his own internal dialogue and intuition. He has lived so many lives. All of his eras, all of his albums show a distinct point in his life. They're unlike each other. They all have their unique formula and their unique presentation of his lived experiences. Some of them are more fictional based, of him just telling a story and making things up and having fun with it. Some of them are super deeply personal, Some of them are deeply personal and just reflect his life and what he learned. And I think that his formula for creativity is one of the most aspirational ones and something that we can all take a little piece of. And he preaches the power of being yourself. No one else can tell you how to be you. You are the only one that knows that. And he kind of had this pattern in his career of taking 2 years in between every album. So he would put something out, disappear for 2 years, and then release something again. But with his last album, I can't remember how long it is. It might have been 4 years. Yeah, I think 4. Yes, because he released Call Me If You Get Lost in 2020. And he took 4 years off and in 2024 released his most authentic and vulnerable and deeply raw album to date because he gave himself time to truly F the noise, not worry about people telling him that you need to release this, you need to put this out, we miss you, where's a new album, oh, Tyler fell off, Tyler's done this. No, Tyler's actually a genius and is taking time to be present for his life and taking time to let the creativity marinate. He's not rushing it. You cannot rush great ideas. You cannot rush creativity. You cannot plan for that. It only happens when you give yourself the space to be present. And he really does have that recipe down. And another person that I really, me doing my, and by the way, another person that really has that down is Pharrell. He is another person like Rick Rubin who's worked with so many successful artists and has been in the room when the magic happens, and he's been the one making the magic happens. And him and Rick Rubin kind of see eye to eye on this idea, at least from my research on them, that they view the universe as this big library of ideas. And we as humans are simply just borrowing one. We are just taking ideas out, checking them out for a little bit, and then giving them back. And I like that outlook on creativity because especially in our current world of just overconsumption and quick blow-ups and quick virality. It is not sustainable. And there's this big idea of competition, of thinking that you have to be the first one to say something or else someone's going to beat you to it. But there's no rush. There is no rush. We are all here experiencing life, and if someone has an idea or a way of articulating something that resonates with you, even if it was what you were going to say, they just said it first, that's okay. We can all say the same thing, and it can still be meaningful. Someone saying something before I do does not make them better or make me less than. We are simply just the universe expressing itself as a human being in different forms, and these ideas are not ours. They are not ours to be attached to, and we should not feel inferiority if someone else gets the idea out first. Instead, we should operate from this abundant mindset that there is a plethora, an infinite amount of ideas and ways to express ourselves in this world, and it is just simply the person putting that out there. The world is yours to take ideas from, and those ideas are not yours to be attached to, they're just yours to express. And I think about this a lot with like TikTok culture and short form content and just people oversaturating the field of creativity and just putting things out to get viral and to get popularity and clicks and views and streams and all of this. And it hurts my brain because even with this podcast, I say this probably every episode, I want to grow this. I feel really called to make these episodes, and I feel really deeply motivated and connected to my message, but I know that me constantly producing just to appeal to as many people as possible and go viral and get clicks and likes and shares and followers is not authentic to me. That does not feel deeply grounded in what I know. And I'll be so honest, my episodes, the most listens I've gotten in the last 6 months on this podcast has been 6 people, which anybody that is in the creatives field would probably take that hit pretty close to home. They would take that pretty hard, take that pretty personally, because it can sometimes feel embarrassing putting something out there and nobody listened or nobody really caring like you do. And I think about that a lot, and I definitely battle with it a lot, but I've started to learn how to not take things personally and also understand that it is not your job, nor do I really think it's an achievable goal to get people to care about things the way that you do. If something pops up on someone's feed, if you're seeing this video or listening to this or streaming it, however it got to you, it was because it was meant to. And maybe you were looking up how to be authentic, how can I connect to myself, what does it mean to be yourself, and that led you to me. But I cannot force that sort of divine intervention, divine connectivity to happen. That is out of my control. All I can do is make things that feel true to me and speak in a way of honesty and in a way that aims to bring people together. And if it happens, it happens. If it takes a little bit longer than I thought to happen, that's okay too, because I'm not on my timeline. I'm on a bigger timeline than I can really understand. And there's a hummingbird again. Clock it. Thank you. But truly, redefining what success means for you, specifically as a creative person. If getting views and getting followers is all that you are looking for, maybe you need to ask yourself, is that authentic? Is that true to me? Do I really believe that? Or is that something that the world, that society, social media has made me want to prioritize? I said from day one, and I literally wrote this down in my notebook about creating the podcast, I only wanted to reach one person. And if I reached one person and made that one person feel less alone, then my mission, my purpose has been fulfilled. And so whenever I get wrapped up in the idea that not a lot of people are tuning in, that I'm losing followers, that I haven't grown as much as I want to, I get at least one view a week, and that's enough. That's enough. I don't need to be constantly in this pursuit of reaching the masses and just putting things out that aren't quality content just to say that I have something out, just to adhere to this posting schedule. Let me remind you, we live on a floating rock, in case anybody forgot. The odds of us existing are slim to none, and the odds of us existing on this planet at the same time in this galaxy are, like, I can't even describe to you how much of a miracle it is that we are even alive to talk and consume and share and connect with people. So whenever you get a little bit in your head about if your content is reaching people, remind yourself that the fact that you are putting it out there is far more important than the recognition that it may or may not receive. The process of creating, and this is not a quote that I coined, but the quote of the process of creating is way more important than the product, than the end result, than the interaction that you get from other people. The act of creating something and making something that didn't exist is what is magical. And that is how you are able to demonstrate your authenticity. Sometimes the only way to be yourself and learn how to truly tune into your voice again is emulating. I don't think it's a crime to emulate and see something that is like deeply authentic and resonates with you, seeing that in someone else and then putting your own spin on it. Again, from the podcast Skinny Dipping, in that conversation, they were talking about how you have to emulate other people's music before making your own. And my own interpretation of that, specifically as a dancer, like I said, is watching someone perform and seeing something that really moves me and finding a way to incorporate that in my own style. Or going and taking a class. That is someone else's movements, their own creativity, their own style, uniqueness, but then applying that to my body and putting my own spin on it, making it my own. Emulating and then finding a way to make that authentic to me. I think back to times when I felt the most creative or just the most like liberated, and I love capturing life and sharing it with people and making meaning out of the mundane, right? I've been making YouTube videos for like 6 years maybe, since high school. And I did not care if people made fun of me or if people saw my videos and thought I was cringe or thought that I was acting a certain way. I did not care. I was the most free and the most dialed in on my creativity in that stage. And there comes an aspect of detaching from what other people may say or how they may perceive it. And in this kind of quest of finding myself, which is really just recognizing that I'm here right now, is thinking about like what does it mean to be creative and how do you sustain that? No one teaches you how to stay inspired. They teach you how to get inspiration and create from there, but what happens when that falls off? What happens when you don't have anything that sparks joy? You don't have anything that makes you want to create. You don't want to pick up that pen journal. You don't want to make a song, make a dance. You just feel stuck in your existence. Anytime that happens to me now, I go out and I get comfy in the world. I go out and I touch grass. I go out and connect with nature because there's so much beauty and lessons and deeply rich wisdom in our world, in the earth, in nature. Get off your phone. Stop scrolling on TikTok. Create something, anything, honestly. Create a poem. Create a journal entry that no one else has to see but you. Create a song. Listen to a song. Dance to that song. Move your body. Interpret that sound into movement. And just create more than you consume. Create more than you consume. Create things that are just for you sometimes, that don't have to be seen or that don't have to be subjected to the opinions of other people. Create something that is meaningful to you. And if it resonates with people, that's a bonus. But if no one ever sees it, that is still meaningful because you took something that didn't exist and you made it exist. Some things that can get in the way of our creativity, there's a long laundry list of things, but some things that I've identified is that you need to make peace with being misunderstood and going unnoticed. The ones that are meant to find you are not going to find you if you don't even let yourself create the thing. If you are already editing your ideas before you even put it out, before you even try, and telling yourself that you're not good enough, how the heck are you going to connect with the people that are in alignment with you if you don't even put yourself out there? You don't even give yourself the space to shine. Give yourself the permission to shine and be messy and mess up and fall down, but get back up. You have to be willing to be misunderstood and also be the only one cheering for yourself if you want to go anywhere. And that's why I'm so okay with putting these episodes out, because I know that there's going to be a time in my life where I do have more of a following. I do have the recognition that I've always longed for, and I will know that that came with the relentless and unwavering belief in myself and my vision. Everything that I've put out, all 51 episodes, are authentic. They are deeply honest and sometimes dramatic and sometimes ugly and messy and sometimes, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like on the tip of my tongue. Sometimes authentic to a fault. Sometimes I say too much, but that's okay because I mean it. This is an act of creativity. It is a way of making meaning out of what we're going through. And another thing that gets in the way commonly when you are trying to be authentic is the illusion of being stuck. Saying that you're stuck when you barely even started. Having this overwhelming abundance of ideas in your brain and you don't really know how to make them exist. And you know that it's going to take a lot of time and effort and a lot of isolation a lot of the times to make that thing exist. So then you just stop before you even start. I'm very, very guilty of this. I have so many episode ideas listed in my notes app that I just haven't gone around to putting out or making because I know that it takes a lot of effort and I can get caught up in my everyday life that I don't give enough time to this. But you are not really stuck. You're only as stuck as you convince yourself to be. And if you haven't even started yet, how could you possibly be stuck? You have to try and put yourself out there and start before you can even stop and tell yourself to slow down and put it to a halt. You have to try and put yourself out there first before you even know if what you're doing is going to be authentic and good for you. And another really, really, really big thing that I think majorly gets in the way of us being connected to our true selves is hyper-individualism. Saying, I'm not like other people, the whole I'm not like other girls movement, and the need to be different. This is directly connected with our ego. Our ego is what perpetuates those ideas of inferiority and superiority and thinking that you're other. Othering yourself and making them less than to make yourself feel better than. And literally, I wrote this down. I think it's so funny, but it's a song from the movie Rags, which if you know, you know. It's from Nickelodeon. Yeah, Nickelodeon with Keke Palmer and Max. I can't think of his last name. But that song, it's called Not So Different at All. We are all connected. We are all connected. We are all human beings. And we create so much unnecessary separation when we say that we're not like other people. When we think that our ideas are strictly our own and that if someone else says it, oh, I can't associate with them. Oh, I'm going to be jealous of you now because you articulated something that I feel, but you said it first, so therefore I don't like you. We live on a floating rock, people. We are here to connect with each other, and we are not as different as we convince ourselves of. We are allowed to be like other people. When I am on my TikTok, for example, and I see someone that says a message that I felt but I just didn't articulate yet, and they articulated it perfectly, I feel so connected. And it's crazy that that connection can happen from someone that lives far away from me. Someone that I've never met and interacted with in person, I feel so connected to. And I think that's the beauty of the internet. I just spat. Sorry. I think that's the beauty of the internet and social media. And I think when we tune into that aspect, the soul aspect of social media is when the magic can really happen. But that cannot happen if we are focused on being other than, if we are focused on being unlike anybody else, if we reject anything that resembles other people. It is that recognition of our seemingly different aspects of ourselves that connects us. We're not so different at all. Me singing the song, we're not so different at all. At all, at all, hey, we're not so different at all. One last thing I want to share about creativity is the fact that creativity comes in a lot of different forms. That's not a new idea, but I feel like a lot of people, myself included, can get so fixated on the form of creativity that we're putting out there. Music, paintings, journaling, songs, dance, film, television. Those are all a form of creativity that is widely recognized, but I think that viewing the love that you give to people and the way that you treat people as a creative act is also really deeply profound. I heard this from an interview with Coleman Domingo and Jacob Elordi. Jacob is talking about how the way that his mom treats people and the way that she loves and spreads joy everywhere that she goes, that is how she is an artist. And that will forever stick with me because I can overthink my podcast, a lot, and thinking that it's not a valid form of art, that it's not a valid form of creativity. But the way that I see the world and the way that I interpret that, and am then able to transmute that into light and further love and just Uno reverse, double it, and send it out into the world, is a form of art. And it's not always going to be recognized by people, but I think that your vulnerability, the way that you treat yourself, the way you try to cultivate community in your own way is artistic, and you are an artist in that way. Just like Rick Rubin says, we are all artists in our own right. Do not invalidate your own creative expression just because that's not what's widely accepted as being an artist. Authenticity means taking breaks, slowing down, saying no, letting ideas marinate, knowing when to give yourself time to just ground yourself in being. No one can tell you how to be yourself. You are the only one that has those answers, and a big way to find those answers is by turning down the volume, turning down the noise of everybody else, and deeply being curious about what's going on internally. Reconnecting with your childlike self. Asking yourself, what are things that naturally light me on fire? What are things that come to me easily, that I don't really have to necessarily try to be good at, that I'm just naturally gifted at? Find a way to nurture that in your everyday life and truly, truly, truly understand that you are the only you that will ever exist. You're the only you that is and ever will be, and that is so, 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 so beautiful. And it is a gift to be you. It is a gift to exist and have the brain and have the heart and have the soul that you do. Find a way to love that and nurture that and spend time with that. I love you, and I'm rooting for you, and I appreciate you being here. I think that everybody has beautiful gifts, and I hope that you find a way to connect with your gifts, and if you feel called to share them, do so. I love you so much. Thank you for being here. I just really love the lessons that I've been learning recently, and I'm really blessed to be able to share them with you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Forehead kiss time. Bring it in, girls. And boys. If there's any boys listening here, I love you. Thank you for being here. All right, bring it in. I will see you maybe on a Wednesday, maybe not on a Wednesday. I'll see you when I feel called to see you. Because I will always speak when I feel called to speak, not just because I think I have to, you know? I love you. I'll see you very, very soon.